All right, so next I'm going to talk about Black Mirror Season 6. Now, for this, I'm going to go through non spoilers and then spoilers. So if you haven't watched the sixth season of Black Mirror yet, or you've just watched a couple episodes and are not all the way caught up, I will have time codes below in the description so you can kind of jump around and you won't have anything spoiled. So first, I'm going to give like a non spoiler review. And then before I go into my spoilers, I will give you a warning so you can click around. So the first thing I will say is I like this season quite a bit. I've seen some reviews that are one way and the other on this season, but all in all, I thought it was a good season. It has been 4 years since the last season was released, season 5, and I definitely felt that, like kind of when this first trailer was released, I was like, oh yeah, Black Mirror exists. I completely forgot about that series that I actually liked a lot, but since it hasn't been out for so long, I really forgot about it. Another thing that I thought was cool about the season was from the trailer, I was most excited about one episode in particular, and it turned out that that was the episode I liked the least out of the 5. I will go into which one was which during spoilers, but Black Mirror is good at a lot of things. And one of the things it's good at is subverting audience expectation. And they definitely did that more than once with this season, specifically in this case, where, like I said, one episode I thought I was going to like a lot just from the scenes in the trailer. And then at the end, there were definitely episodes that I like more than that. And I just love the anthology style. I wish there were more series like this. I totally can understand the feel of this series without every episode being the same, with the same actors or following the same, kind of motif or anything like that, the same format. I love this. I love kind of the Twilight Zone kind of style of anthology shows. And I'm really happy that they've kept doing this. And they really kind of expanded on it, I think, this season. And I'm all for it. I liked how they did that. Another note that I have that I really liked about the season is how they took aim specifically at streaming media like Netflix itself and how the content shapes culture. A lot of these services would just take the money and run. But I think that Netflix is doing something with this series and making a comment about not just streaming media, but they themselves kind of put it out there like this is what we do sometimes and we don't like it and you should be aware of this and probably not care about this stuff that much. And they've kind of touched on media before, definitely. Last season had an episode with Miley Cyrus that really touched on it, but I really like, especially in the first 2 episodes of this season, and it's not really a spoiler to say that they really look at what Netflix and streaming media as a whole has done to culture in a couple of different ways. And it's really smart. It's really like makes you think in different ways completely, and I really like that. It's another good thing that Black Mirror does. It's kind of very meta, but this is just being over meta, like they're literally talking about themselves. There's a streaming service in one of these episodes that looks just like Netflix, that's laid out exactly the same way. I mean, it's not Netflix. They do diverge, definitely. They're making fun of themselves. I mean, they're definitely talking about themselves. I thought it was pretty cool to do this in this kind of culture where companies are way more concentrated on making money, and if something's popular, just keep doing it, no matter if it's, bashing a kid over the head. If that's popular, just keep putting it on TV and keep doing it over and over again. So I think that it's very smart that they did that in this season. I really like that. And I can say that after 6 seasons, Black Mirror can still shock you and make you think. Sometimes it makes you think about things or see things in a way from a certain perspective that you're not even aware of, like going into the episode, just because of where you live or, what kind of person you are, what, culture you're in. You don't see what's going on in the rest of your country or the rest of the world. And you start watching this episode and you think it's going to be about this one thing. And then they start talking about this other thing. And you're like, wow, I never really thought about it like that. Black Mirror is great with that. And they definitely do that a couple times, I think, this season. And they definitely shock you. One episode in particular has an ending that is very shocking, even though you can kind of see where it's going, I think. And I'll talk about that in spoilers. But there's always one episode that kind of stays with you where you like turn off the episode and you're like, I might not watch this for a couple more hours. I might just go walk around and play with my dog or my kids or just do something, play a video game for a little bit, just kind of depress a little bit, after that episode. There's definitely at least one episode of Black Mirror that hits you like that. And, they can do it again 6 seasons later. And it's a different way. It's definitely a different way. And it's, it's kind of a staple of this series. And I think they were successful of it in this season. And I also liked that within these episodes, not everything is in the future. Usually in a Black Mirror episode, it's in the like very near future. and the technology is very familiar. There's 3 episodes in this season. One takes place in 1969, one takes place in 1979, and one takes place, I believe, in 2004. And they're all in kind of alternate pasts that have different technology and stuff like that. But the style that they're shot in is very much akin to that era. I love that. I thought that was so cool. The aesthetic was really cool, and I like that it's different from past seasons. Like, we're not always in what looks like where we are right now, or maybe like the near to not too distant future. I really hope they continue, doing that if they continue making more of these. I don't know if they're going to make more Black Mirror, but hopefully this is popular enough that they do. It's an anthology series, so it's probably in one way very difficult, in one way very easy to pull off, because you don't have to have this huge cast on hand to kind of sign all these contracts and stuff. But still, when you get to go ahead to do a new season, you better know who you're going to cast and all this kind of stuff, because you have to build something from the ground up every season, and really every episode, not just every season. But I really like that those episodes were, kind of set in the past. I really thought that was cool. And I also like that there were less tropes that were tied to technology. Black Mirror kind of through the years has always had something to do with technology in virtually every episode. And this season is not like that. One episode in particular, it calls it out very plainly by stating, this episode is Red Mirror Presents, and it's really more of a horror episode than having anything to do with technology. But I think another episode, it's very little to do with technology. Really just the last shot kind of brings technology back into the storyline of the episode. But I'm fine with that. I love the Twilight Zone and Tales from the Dark Side, Tales from the Crypt. I was a huge fan of all that stuff. So I am fine with them doing more horror stuff and less technology stuff. Keep doing that. I think it's cool. I think you definitely don't want to completely go away with that, and maybe keep with the Red Mirror stuff. And when you're going to do horror stuff, say, Red Mirror Presents, but still do the technology stuff. But I'm fine with if you want to do one episode or 2 episodes out of 5 that are just strictly horror. I'm all about that. And then the last non-spoiler thing I'm going to talk about are the performances. Black Mirror usually has some great performances, and this season is no different. The ones that I'm going to point out in particular are Annie Murphy, who stars in the first one, Joan is Awful. She's awesome. The episode is called Joan is Awful, but she is awesome. She plays more than one role in the episode, and I loved it. I have seen her on Schitt's Creek before, and again, this episode is very meta with that, and it's really good. I really thought she did a great job, and she's probably the star of the entire season. I think I've read some reviews already that kind of point her out as a high point. Even people that don't necessarily like the season single out her performance as just really like great and a little bit over the top, but I like it. It's good over the top. It's not like trying too hard. And also the stars of the last episode titled Demon 79. I've never seen them before in anything, but I thought they were great. That episode is really weird. And again, I'm going to talk about that in spoilers, but it's really just them two throughout that episode. There are some supporting characters that they have a few lines with here and there, but it's a lot of just them two in a room together. And I dug it. Their chemistry is really kind of quirky and weird. And it's kind of the demon and the angel on your shoulder at the same time. Definitely more demon, but like speaks like an angel, if that makes sense. So it's cool. I really like it, and I thought that both of the stars of that episode were really good. I found out the episode was directed by the same person that did Miss Marvel for the MCU. I thought that was really interesting because I like that series a lot. It's totally different than this episode, but I really liked it. So definitely that episode was a highlight for me. So that will end the non-spoiler section of my review. But before I go to the spoiler section, I will say this season is a good watch. I think you should definitely watch this season if you are a fan of sci-fi. It's not too crazy. Again, there's one episode that will kind of stay with you a little bit. And it's kind of like, but the other episodes I think make you think more than like kind of scare you or kind of make you feel like depressed or anything like that. I think that all in all, it's a great season, and I wouldn't watch it with your kids, but I think it's a great season and you should definitely watch it. But now I will go into the spoiler section. So if you don't want to hear spoilers, definitely jump ahead right now. So for spoilers, I'm actually going to go episode by episode and just do a little brief blurb about each. So for the first one, Joan is Awful, my favorite episode, bar none. I really liked the episode. The reason I liked it so much, not just because of the performances, but because I love the twist. Of course, Black Mirror, it's all about the twist. It's all about like how it makes you think. And I love the twists that you really don't see coming. Like these are hard to do because you come into Black Mirror expecting it. So to be able to still pull something off and to not get the audience to really see it coming, I thought was great. So the basic story is that this woman, Joan, all of a sudden sees her life, like the day that she just had, on TV as a new series on a service called Streamberry, which is obviously Netflix. The whole country gets tuned in to the series. And of course, like everybody she knows is also watching it. And her boyfriend watches her go to the therapist and talk about how she doesn't really like him and that he's bland and that she wishes she was with her old boyfriend. And then it shows how she fired a coworker. The way they show it is a little more dramatized than her actual life, of course, and it's a little more callous. And of course, Salma Hayek plays her on the show. So she's playing it up too. And I love Salma Hayek in this episode. Michael Cera is also great in this episode, even though it was only in a few minutes, but his few minutes are really gold, I think. And then eventually Joan like loses her job, loses everything. So she tries to sue the company that's following her and learns that when she signed up just to watch the service, she also signed up for them to use her likeness through like basically Alexa, like Alexa learning everything about you. And they equate it to when, you talk about something like some kind of product and then you start getting ads for that product on your phone. Well, this is the next step of that. Basically, they're hearing everything you're saying and they're rebuilding your life based on what you've said and what they've heard on all these different devices, which is really scary. And I'd like to think that technology is not out there, but guess what? We've got a writer's strike going on right now that talks about these issues specifically. And wow, another way that Black Mirror is great is when they talk about issues that are going on right now. And they must have known that a writer's strike was going to happen because these were filmed a long time ago. I mean, at least the stories were thought up years ago, but we're going through a writer's strike right now where the writers are fighting to have AI removed from the creative process. And here we're getting a prime example of what will happen if they do not do that. This episode is about a series based completely on AI and AI creating content for viewers and how viewers would react to that. So it's really scary, it's really poignant, and it's just Black Mirror at its best. So really, I think if I was going to show someone that was on the fence and never watched a Black Mirror episode before, I would show them this episode. I think this episode is really Black Mirror at its best. And I think already it's in my top 3 Black Mirror episodes of all time. I just really enjoyed it. And again, it really touches on everything that's great about Black Mirror. It's meta, there's a twist, and then there's a different twist. The final twist is that Annie Murphy's character is not the first Joan. She's in the first fictive level, and there's a Joan beneath her, and there's a Joan above her, and the real Joan is doing all these things. And it turns out that Annie Murphy's character doesn't have any control over what's going on, and Annie Murphy is also an actress that's helping out the real Joan, just like the real Salma Hayek is supposed to be helping out the Joan that's Annie Murphy. It's just great. It's just freaking Black Mirror at its best. And I'm just a huge fan of this episode. And like I said, in my top 3 for sure. The next episode is titled Loch Henry. And just like Joan is Awful, it touches on Netflix and what effect they have on not just culture, but the people that are involved in creating content, specifically documentaries and documentaries based around horrible events like serial killings. Netflix got a lot of subscribers after they started airing these documentaries based on serial killers. One in particular that I can't remember right now, but it was the one that went back to court just because of what was found out on the documentary. And this episode, Loch Henry, follows these 2 kids that are going to make a documentary about one thing, and then the girlfriend of the main character learns about this missing couple and these killings that happened at the town where her boyfriend grew up in, and they learn more and learn more and learn more about it. And it turns out that this kid's parents were involved with the killer and staged everything to point it to one guy and even kept tapes of what happened. And eventually they find out about the parents being involved in it, and the mother commits suicide and gives over all the evidence basically to the son so it can be part of the documentary. It's really chilling, and it really shows you how these documentaries can not only affect the people that watch these, and because the end of the episode shows how popular the town has become, how popular this kid is now. He's winning awards, and he has this great apartment. He's drinking champagne in a tux. but his life is just ruined. His girlfriend died during the making of the documentary. His mother killed herself. He knows that his mother and father were these horrible people and involved in this twisted thing. It's just a crazy look, and again, a very meta look, and shows you what's going on with Netflix and other streaming services, because Netflix is not the only streaming service by any means that has shown these documentaries. But I think anyone would agree that Netflix probably gained the most from showing these. And they probably know a little thing about how it affects the people that take part in these documentaries. I really hope that nothing like this ever happened or anything close to it, but I'm probably wrong. And probably people learned more than they wanted to creating these documentaries. So, a really good Black Mirror episode. I wouldn't say it kept me as enthralled as the first episode. It's a much more slow moving story. And I think that you can kind of feel the twist coming at one point in the second act. I think once they talked about how his father got shot, and just something about it made it seem like, oh, wait a minute, the father is responsible for catching this guy. They're involved somehow, and maybe not involved completely, but I kind of saw the twist coming really way more so than the prior episode for sure. But I think that that's one way that this episode is not as good as the first episode of the sixth season, Joan is Awful. This episode is a lot more slow moving, and you can kind of feel the twist coming before it comes. And I think that the first fictive level twist in Joan is Awful, I think is out of nowhere. I never saw that coming, but maybe you did. Let me know in the comments if you saw the twist coming in that first episode, but I sure didn't. But in this episode, I feel like I did. Maybe not the whole thing. I mean, I didn't get maybe not that the mom was as part of it as she ended up being. I thought maybe she was just a willing accomplice. Like, she seems so frail and fragile that maybe if the husband was this crazy guy, he beat her down and made it so she was too afraid to say anything. I kind of thought that was coming. So the mom thing was maybe a little bit of a surprise for me, but all in all, it was a more obvious plot line than most Black Mirror episodes. And then the third episode, Beyond the Sea, this is the episode that I thought I was going to like the most and ended up liking the least out of the 5. Because, first of all, I love these space episodes that Black Mirror has done. Anytime they've gone into space or done anything with space, I think they've done a really good job. The Star Trek parody episode is the one that sticks out the most to me. So the fact that this episode looked to be taking place in space, I thought was going to be really cool. Also, Aaron Paul, Josh Hartnett, I really like those actors. Kate Mara is good too. All three of them are excellent in this episode, by the way. Even though I may not really like the episode, I thought that all three of them do a really great performance. It's a really kind of hurry up and wait kind of performance. You have these long lulls of nothing happening, and then boom, something crazy happens, and you're like, what is going on? What kind of story is this? And then finally, you get this lull, and then boom, something else crazy happens. And then I think there's another lull, and then the final, crazy thing happens in the end. So this story is set in that 1969 alternate setting that I was talking about earlier, where we are a spacefaring culture, and we also have developed technology where it allows astronauts to take on long distance missions, and then while sleeping, transferring their consciousness to a robot body that kind of interacts with their family. So they're only really conscious on the ship in their actual bodies when they're doing stuff, and when they're just traveling and not really doing anything like fixing or taking a physical or taking readings or anything like that, they're living in a robot body in 1969 on the planet Earth. And then eventually some crazy cult that I think there's some Manson kind of aspect to him. I think they're definitely trying to do an alternate, Charles Manson, not Marilyn Manson, Charles Manson and his family thing with this storyline. And they end up not only killing the robot of Josh Hartnett's character, but his family as well in a really gruesome way. And they force Josh Hartnett to watch it and then just send his consciousness back up to space so he can't do anything about it. He's there and he can't save his family at all. It's really shocking. And you kind of think that's going to be the last shocking thing to see, but it's not. And then, so kind of like I said, that hurry up and wait, it's boom, 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 boom. And then you have that wait, and then something crazy happens. So Josh Hartnett's character obviously goes crazy. They're in year 2 of a 6-year mission. So they can't do anything for this guy. They can't build him another robot for, reasons probably convenient to the plot line. But Josh Hartnett's character can use Aaron Paul's robot character on Earth. So just by using his dog tag, he can slide in figuratively and literally into Aaron Paul's robot's character and interact with his wife and stuff like that. So at first, I mean, I think that at first everything is wrong. Like as soon as they mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to end up horribly. Like, first of all, you got this guy that's obviously crazy. How can you not be crazy after seeing your whole family get killed? And then Aaron Paul's character is just like, oh yeah, I'm going to let you walk around in my body and hang out with my family in the middle of nowhere because, I just want to help you out. I just, I kind of took me out of it at that point because I knew something really bad was going to happen again. I pretty much guessed actually what happened. I wasn't sure if they were gonna shy away from it, and they kind of did by not showing exactly what happens, but it's definitely inferred. But what ends up happening is Josh Hartnett's character as Aaron Paul falls in love or has feelings towards Kate Mara, Aaron Paul's wife, and makes a move, and then she rejects him, and then Aaron Paul says, this really weird kind of thing where Aaron Paul's character is like, I'm not gonna let you touch my wife, but yeah, you could use my body and finish a painting. Like what? Like again, it kind of took me out of it. This is why this episode really doesn't do it for me. And then the episode ends with after Josh Hartnett's character is told off by Aaron Paul's character, he figures out a way for Aaron Paul to be outside of the space station while he steals his dog tag, uses his body one more time, and kills Aaron Paul's family, basically to put Aaron Paul in the same state that Josh Hartnett's character is in. They're both trapped in the spaceship for at least 3 years. I doubt they make it 3 years. I'm sure they go at it before that. But that's how the episode ends with them together. Black Mirror always has a shocking episode where the end kind of sticks with you a little bit. And I think this episode was designed to do that. But I don't know. It wasn't one of my favorite Black Mirror episodes. The choices made by the characters didn't make a lot of sense to me. And it took me out of the story multiple times. And I saw the twist coming. So not really what Black Mirror is meant for, in my opinion. The fourth episode of the season is titled Maisie Day. And it follows two characters kind of. One who is like a member of the paparazzi and is, the real gross paparazzi that tries to do like upskirt stuff and all that stupid stuff. And she's trying to get pictures of different people. She ends up taking pictures of this one guy who is engaged in a gay encounter with another man, and it ruins his career and his family, and he ends up committing suicide, and she goes through an existential crisis. Because of this, this episode, all in all, I liked, but the first two acts I was like checked out on, honestly. Not just because I wasn't a huge fan of the last episode, but I really am not a fan of celebrity culture. I hate it. I hate the fact that, like people care about what people are eating, what people are dressing, what people are doing. Like, I think celebrities should just be on screen in their roles and nobody should give a crap what they do. I mean, yeah, if they're like pedophiles or if they're hurting people, yeah, I want to know about that, and they should be like punished to the extent of the law, and nobody should get away with anything. But I don't want to know who they're hooking up with or, all that stupid stuff. So really, the first two acts of this episode kind of play out like that. We're not just following the photographer. All of a sudden, we're also following the star of this English program who does mushrooms and thinks she hits something. The audience is made to think she hits a man, but it turns out that she didn't just hit a man. She hit a very special kind of man who is a werewolf. And in the third act, the whole story goes crazy with the reveal that this star, Maisie Day, is not in rehab and she's not suffering like post-traumatic stress from hitting a person while being intoxicated and doing a hit and run. Basically, she hit a werewolf. Like when she hit somebody, she didn't initially run away. She went over to check on who she hit, and it turned out it wasn't a man, it was a werewolf. She got bit by the werewolf and then turned into one, and they had her chained up at this facility so that she could kind of go through the change and not hurt anybody. Well, the paparazzi show up, and they think that she's there because she's detoxing, and they try to, unhook her, and she kills everybody but one of them, basically. And then the episode ends with her killing herself and the photographer getting a picture of that. And that's kind of how the technology ties back in. So I really loved the werewolf reveal. I loved how the episode changed very quickly. I just loved the third act. It's just the first two acts. I think I was even like playing a video game on mute. Like I was I was that tuned out of the episode just because the things that, she was going through and both characters, like, I really don't care. Like, celebrities, I understand, are people. They're going to have drug addictions. And if they're trying to get help, they should be able to get help. They shouldn't have to worry about people chasing them down. And when I see stuff like that, it just kind of like almost makes me angry that we live in a culture where people have to deal with stuff like that. And people say, oh, you sign up for that. You do not. Like, your brain is broken if you think that. Like, just because you sign up to be an actor doesn't mean like you have to worry about, like where you go out to eat just because somebody's going to take a picture of like you and say like, oh, this is what so-and-so looks like without makeup on. It's just dumb. And it really, I think, creates a bad culture. But again, I'm going to get off my soapbox and just say like, that's kind of why I was tuned out of the first 2 acts. But once we find out that, whoa, she's a werewolf, I was like, yes, like this is exactly like what I want to see. And again, I love the twists of Black Mirror, and they got me in this one because I never in a million years would have thought that it was a werewolf. But the fact that she was in like a small European town, like everything kind of, after the fact kind of added up, and I really liked that. So in the end, I did like this episode, but I would just say that, the first 2 acts were kind of boring for me, but I love the end, and I thought the performances were really good as well. And then finally, we have the Red Mirror Presents episode of Demon 79, which is the really, I think, horror-themed episode. This episode had nothing to do with technology. It was set in 1979. I didn't notice anything different from the actual 1979. What happens is a woman working in, I think, Great Britain at a shoe store gets cut and the blood gets on a talisman. And it's kind of a twist on the old monkey paw storyline where, somebody gets a monkey paw or a paw, some kind of hand that's got like 3 fingers. And every time they make a wish, like a finger goes down. Well, in this case, the person is bound to this talisman and a demon is like helping her out. But the demon comes in the form of like this like 1970s style musician that's really flamboyant and stuff. And I thought he was really cool. I already discussed that one of the standouts for this episode were the chemistry between the 2 stars. And I just really liked them together. It was a really odd pairing, I think. And even their relationship at times, you thought they were on the same page. And then at other times, it's like, no, they're not at all. Like she does not understand what's going on, or he does not understand her, or what's going on. But I really liked that. I really liked their chemistry. I love the way it was shot. It was very Grindhouse style. And I thought it was really cool. It was a really good change up from the rest of the Black Mirror episodes. And the fact that it had nothing to do with technology really didn't bother me at all. And I thought the ending was really good too. So back to the plot of the story, the main character is tasked with killing 3 people over 3 days. And every time she kills somebody, one of the lines, there's 3 lines on this talisman, one of the lines gets taken away. So she initially thinks she knows what she has to do. And then she finds out after killing one person that didn't count because they themselves were a killer, and you can't kill somebody who is a killer. It doesn't count for whatever rules of what's going on in this episode. And she's unable to kill 3 people that fit the criteria before the 3 days come up. And she witnesses, the end of the world. Not just that, but the demon that was helping her is now banished to oblivion and agrees to take her with. So I thought that was a really cute ending. I thought it was really good. The whole episode is really quirky and really, again, subverts your expectations about what's going to happen. And I thought it was great. I think this, besides the first episode, this was my second favorite episode of the season. I'd still put it at least in my top 10 of all Black Mirror episodes. I really liked it. I really liked that they leaned into the horror more than the technology. And I thought it was a great episode. But let me know, what did you think of the 6th season of Black Mirror? Will you be recommending it to friends? Are you going to keep watching it if it comes out? Or do you think it has lost its luster? I know there are a few reviews that said, they just spent too long between the last season to this one, and people just don't care about it anymore. I don't think that's true, especially in the age of streaming. I still watch things that were released 5, 10, 15 years ago just because of streaming. So I don't necessarily think that's true. I really thought this was a good season. I probably actually liked it more than the last season, if I'm being completely honest. So I liked the season, but let me know, what did you think of the season of Black Mirror? Hey everyone, Eric here. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. This was taken from my weekly podcast, WDIM News, which you can catch each Monday on this channel. If you would like to check out the full podcast, you can do so by clicking on this video here. Make sure that you not only hit the like button to help support me, but also hit the subscribe button so that you know when my new videos come out. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?